It was supposed to be an ordinary road trip, a chance for my friends and me to unwind after a hectic semester. I'm Mark Peterson, and I'd planned this getaway with my college buddies, Emily Rhodes and Daniel Clark. We were heading to a cabin in the Adirondacks for some much-needed relaxation and outdoor fun. The drive was uneventful at first, with good weather and our favourite music keeping spirits high. But as we ventured deeper into the countryside, things began to feel off. The road signs became sparse and the GPS signal was unreliable. We joked about getting lost, but as daylight began to wane, our light-hearted banter turned into mild concern. Around dusk, we passed through a small town with an old-fashioned feel. It was charming at first glance: quaint houses, a single gas station, and a couple of people strolling the sidewalks. We stopped to refuel and ask for directions. The attendant, an elderly man with a grizzled face, gave us a friendly but somewhat unsettling smile. "You folks heading to the cabins up north?" he asked, his voice carrying an odd, almost conspiratorial tone. "Yeah, that's right," Emily replied. "Just looking for the quickest route." The attendant's smile faded slightly. "Be careful out there. The roads can get tricky. Not many people come this way after dark." We thanked him and continued on our way, shaking off the unsettling feeling his warning left us with. The road turned from paved to gravel, and the darkness closed in around us. We passed a sign that read, "Welcome to Pine Hollow," and the trees seemed to encroach on the road as if trying to swallow it whole. About an hour later, the headlights picked up something unusual: an old abandoned car off the side of the road, its windows shattered and tyres deflated. It looked like it had been there for years. "That's creepy," Daniel said, his voice laced with unease. "Should we stop and check it out?" Emily, sensing the growing tension, said, "No way, let's just keep moving." The road seemed to twist and turn more as the night deepened, and the occasional flicker of headlights from passing cars became rarer. Then, we saw something that made my blood run cold. A figure standing in the middle of the road, barely visible in the dim light. It was a woman, dressed in a tattered white gown, her face obscured by the shadow of her long hair. "Stop the car!" Emily shouted. I slammed on the brakes and we skidded to a halt. The figure remained motionless in the road, her head slowly turning towards us. "What do we do?" Daniel asked, his voice a mix of fear and confusion. Before we could decide, the woman suddenly turned and disappeared into the woods. We were all too stunned to move for a moment. "Should we call the police?" Emily suggested, her hands trembling. "Let's just get out of here," I said, feeling a sense of urgency. "We're not far from the cabin now, let's go." We continued driving, our nerves frayed. As we approached the cabin, a strange sense of relief washed over us. We finally arrived and unpacked, trying to shake off the night's events. But when we awoke the next morning, the unsettling incidents of the previous night took on a more disturbing twist. The cabin had a guest book, and as I flipped through it, I found a recent entry dated just the day before. It read, "Strange woman appeared on the road. We thought it was just a prank until our car was tampered with. Be careful." The note was signed by a couple who had been staying at the cabin before us. The realization sank in. We weren't the first to encounter something unsettling on that road. We decided to stay at the cabin, hoping that maybe the events of the previous night were just a series of coincidences. The daylight brought a semblance of normalcy, and we tried to brush off our worries as we settled into our vacation. The cabin itself was cozy and charming, surrounded by dense forest that seemed to hum with the sounds of nature. We spent the day hiking, fishing, and enjoying the tranquility, but the unease from the night before lingered in the back of our minds. As night fell, we lit a fire in the fireplace and sat around it, trying to relax. The crackling flames and the comfortable warmth did little to ease the underlying tension. We laughed and shared stories, but the cabin's isolation and the earlier encounter still hung over us. Later, as we prepared for bed, the power suddenly flickered and went out. The darkness was absolute, and the only light came from the fire in the living room. We stumbled around trying to find flashlights and candles, but the cabin was plunged into a suffocating blackness. "Great, just what we needed," Daniel muttered, trying to keep the mood light. We eventually managed to get some candles lit, casting a flickering light across the room. We decided to go to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. Every sound seemed magnified in the silence. The wind howling outside, the creaks of the cabin settling, and the occasional snap of a twig breaking under the pressure of the forest. Around midnight, I woke up to the sound of scratching at the cabin door. It was subtle at first, almost like a gentle tap, but it grew louder and more insistent. I sat up in bed, listening, and then nudged Emily and Daniel awake. "Do you hear that?" I whispered. Emily strained to listen, her face pale. "Yeah, I hear it." "What is that?" Daniel went to the door to check, but saw nothing through the peephole. He opened it slightly, peering out into the darkness, but there was no one there. The scratching had stopped, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. "I don't see anything," Daniel said, closing the door. "Maybe it's just animals." But then a low, guttural growl resonated from outside, followed by a series of heavy thumps against the cabin walls. We all jumped, our hearts racing. "Okay, that's definitely not animals," Emily said, her voice trembling. We huddled together, trying to figure out what to do. The growling and thumping continued, moving around the cabin, as if something, or someone, was circling us. The occasional glimpse of something moving past the window sent shivers down our spines. In a moment of sheer panic, Daniel grabbed a baseball bat from the closet and went to check the perimeter of the cabin. Emily and I watched from inside, our anxiety growing with each passing second. Daniel's flashlight beams swept over the surroundings, revealing nothing but the dark forest and the occasional rustle of leaves. But then he spotted something strange. A series of deep, claw-like scratches etched into the wooden siding of the cabin. They were fresh, and the marks seemed to follow a deliberate pattern, as if something had been trying to get in. Daniel came back inside, his face pale. "We need to leave, now." The power remained out, and the unsettling sounds continued. We quickly packed what little we could and decided to head back to the gas station for help. As we drove away, the feeling of relief was palpable, but the night's events would haunt us. With a mix of fear and determination, we decided to drive straight to the nearest town to report what had happened. The drive was tense, the forest pressing in around us, and the shadows of the previous night looming large in our minds. Pine Ridge, a small town with its lights flickering like a beacon of hope, eventually came into view. We pulled up to the local police station and rushed inside. The officer at the desk, a middle-aged woman with a weary but kind expression, listened intently as we recounted our harrowing experience. She took detailed notes and immediately called for a patrol unit to investigate the cabin. The wait felt interminable, our nerves frayed as we tried to calm ourselves with lukewarm coffee from the station's break room. Soon, 2 officers arrived, a young man named Officer Daniels and a more seasoned officer with a no-nonsense demeanour. They listened carefully as we explained the details of the night, the eerie figure, the scratching noises, and the growling. As we drove back to the cabin with the officers, the forest seemed even more menacing. The patrol car's headlights cut through the darkness, revealing the cabin's isolated, almost haunted appearance. The officers conducted a thorough search of the area, examining the exterior of the cabin and the surrounding woods. They noted the claw-like scratches on the cabin's siding, but found no other signs of tampering or unusual activity. Officer Daniels, trying to offer some reassurance, mentioned that local legends spoke of the woods being haunted or cursed. "There's a lot of folklore around here," he said. "It's probably just local tales, but it might explain some of the strange things you've seen. Still, we'll keep an eye on the area." Although the officer's explanations offered some relief, the unsettling experience left us feeling on edge. We decided to stay in a local hotel for the night, opting for the safety and comfort of a more populated area. The hotel was a modest but welcome refuge, offering a semblance of normalcy after the night's events. As we settled into our rooms, the reality of what we'd encountered began to sink in. The eerie incidents and the cryptic local legends combined to create a chilling story that we'd carry with us. The dark woods of Pine Hollow, with their haunting memories and unanswered questions, would remain an unsettling chapter in our road trip, a reminder of how quickly a seemingly ordinary adventure can turn into something profoundly disturbing.